Good morning, good evening, whoever you are, wherever you are, whatever you might be doing. We wish to welcome you to the Silverlight Show. The Silverlight shines to illuminate that which lies hidden in darkness. For those of you tuning in today, we welcome you in. Zombies. This is I don't want to call it a pseudo-science, but let's call it a pseudo-magic. There is an old tradition that goes back since time immemorial that people can be brought back to life. It's something I don't think will ever go away. However, in West Africa and the the New World and the Caribbean, this tradition fused with Catholic tradition to become the rites of voodoo. Now there's several different schools of voodoo, some involving Baron Samedi, which for those of you who've watched James Bond might recall the 7 Up guy playing. But realistically, Baron Samedi is the lord in charge of death. And he is granted to certain Bokors, somewhat disrespectfully called witch doctors, but these Bokors are masters of their arcane arts. One of the biggest influences they've had on history has been the zombie. Now, why does the zombie attract us? It's a perfectly good way to explain how somebody might be walking around after they're supposedly dead, might be a near identical twin, but people do look like each other, and if they're in the distance, you might decide to make up your own myth about that. It's a coping mechanism. Oh, the Bokor has taken them. And it's a way for the Bokor and other people to reinforce their power. When the United States went to invade the Haiti, sorry, I've visited both the Dominican Republic and Haiti, and sometimes they get jumbled in my mind. But and one of the things they had to plan for was, I think it was Papa Doc Duvalier, who was the dictator of Haiti at the time, claimed to have an army of thousands of zombies at his control. No reports on whether the soldiers encountered any zombies, but in a combat situation, you're not really checking to see who's alive and who's dead on the other side, and you're definitely not checking for the undead. We do have a case that is very fascinating. A gentleman named Clervas Narcisse, who was a Haitian man born in 1922. He was admitted to a hospital in 1962. He was throwing up blood, he had a fever, he had a fatigue, and doctors couldn't find any explanation or cause. Let me interrupt for a second. It was the 1960s. There are a lot of things they couldn't find a cause or a cure for. And not to insult the doctors in Haiti, but their access to technology and developments and news was even more limited than what we would have in the Western, educated, industrialized, rich, democratic nations. At any rate, he passed away a few days later, or so they thought. Now, the interesting thing to this, they claim he passed away 3 days later. Number 3 pops up a lot, and we know that's a sign of resurrection. In 1962, the records weren't quite so good as they are today, so this could have been retroactively edited. Hard to say. At any rate, he disappears from 1962 when he's about 40 to 1980 when he's nearing 60. And he approached his sister in a different city and managed to convince her and some other people that he knew from childhood, you know, sharing childhood nicknames, secrets only one or the other would know, and that is how he came to be accepted as the same person. And I think it's likely it's the same person because I can have plastic surgery, I can do all sorts of things, but I'm not going to know your childhood memories. I'm not going to know any of that stuff. That requires somebody pretty close to the family. And according to him, after he was buried, after those 3 days, his coffin was exhumed and he was giving a paste. Now, I keep picturing blue when I think of giving a glue. When I picture somebody giving a paste to somebody, it's my imagination that's wrong, not this. And they do know there's a few things like datura, which can cause hallucinations. Um, there's a venom of a pufferfish, and I don't know what they do with it, to be honest with you. But then again, I'm not a Bokor. Bokors do know. And Narcisse claimed he was basically put to work as a slave, mining the sugar plantations, bringing more money to the Bokor. Now, that after time, the Bokor met Baron Samedi and left. Now, Narcisse had returned to life after this because the psychoactive paste that he was being given had worn off. And since there's no place for it, he just wandered coming back. Because what else would you do? You're gone for 16 years, you'd look for family or somebody to figure out what the heck is going on. Supposedly he had abandoned his children, and that's why the Bokor was granted permission to take his soul. But I don't know enough about Haitian culture for that to be the research. This is where we find a dichotomy between Haitian zombies and Romero zombies. Was it Cesar Romero who wrote Night of the Living Dead? It's still a classic film, in my opinion. In The Night of the Living Dead, zombies are chaotic creatures that are just coming towards you, and there's an endless amount of them. The only way that the police manage to break through is superior firepower. But the Haitian zombies are an available source of work. They're put to work on sugar plantations. And honestly, that's dull, dry, boring work. I wouldn't doubt after a few months of that, people would not look so healthy, and whatever this paste was being given to them, the nearest I can figure is like a jello with something to maintain the psychoactive effect, and just enough to keep them alive. What's that stuff they have in prisons? The bread that only gives them enough nutrients to survive for another day. Nutriloaf. That's it. So we know this is possible. The Nutriloaf has been put into place. We also know there's a lot of ways to make bread that you can introduce all sorts of things into a person's body. There's always rumors that they put saltpeter in there to curb the prisoner's aggressive natures. But imagine if you could just put somebody into a coma-like state. And instead of having them wander off to bite people and infect them or eat them, they'll work a sugar plantation or work a mine or whatever it is that you want to have them do. They think they've received samples from Bokor of their poison, whatever it is they use to bring the dead back to life, and to put them down in the first place. However, subsequent examination, and I don't believe they've done this in the past 20 years when we have so much better technology, is that they use the pufferfish venom, tetrodotoxin. You know that fish that if the sushi chef cuts it wrong, you die? Yeah, that's what we're talking about, that exact same thing. So obviously, the Bokors who are doing this have pretty advanced proportions. They say that they've never recovered a true sample, and I think that's logical. If you're a Bokor and you have a town in your thrall, you're not just going to freely give away your secrets. You give them a very watered down version or something that's not even it at all. Because even if it was a regular person coming to ask you, you don't need the competition. And then you could tell them, oh, you did it wrong. That's common for anybody in the magical world. They keep their secrets. This is one thing they're discovering about a lot of old magic books. Some of them were cookbooks. Yes, simple Giada de Laurentiis or Gordon Ramsay writing their recipes down, but they would code the ingredients so that the king couldn't just off them and then steal their perfect pastry recipe. Obviously, from the grimoires, we know the opposite happened, but Bokors held folk wisdom. They had been specially trained, they earned their apprenticeship to an elder Bokor, whether related or not related, and worked their ways up the ranks. I don't think we've seen the end of this, but you'd really need an undercover team to go in and figure out what's happening. Because there's more cases than just Clairvus and Narcisse. There's a whole island full of them. And that's not even going back to Africa and looking at what the people were doing over there. Because they're kind of the originators of this whole thing. This is perhaps an example of very low grade alchemy. And as such, it counts as magic that we can't ignore. Now the films have gotten to the point where the myth is almost unrecognizable from what has been passed down to us. And that's a shame because even in New Orleans, as some people pronounce it, I've been to New Orleans. I'm going to pronounce it the way they do. But they have a lot of investment in voodoo and the rituals. We may, in fact, discover more on North American soil than we could in Haiti. It's an interesting concept. And I read the ethnobiology of the Haitian zombie when I was about 17. There hasn't been a lot of serious research since then. Most people rely on, who was it? Wade Davis, I believe, for their current theories. We can only imagine what we might find if we check what's on our home soil. Because, hey, Haitians, they're humans like us, but they know who's from their village, who's from their tribe, who's from their family, and they're willing to welcome you into it, but you're still on the outside, just like most tribes in most places. You get away from that from the Western, educated, industrialized, rich, democratic nations, but in societies that don't have that safety net, they need their families. They need their support system. They need the mayor. They need the Bokor. They may need the candlestick maker, because candlesticks apparently figure into the voodoo rituals. Black ones. And you need all that because that's what they expect to be able to continue with their civilization. And who am I to say anything to counter that? I think that's enough about the Haitian zombies at the present time and their involvement in magic. So, we hope you enjoyed this episode of the Silverlight Show. If you did, please like, Share, because sharing is caring, unless you're infected by a zombie bite, in which case don't share anything. Subscribe if you haven't subscribed already. Don't forget to click the notification button down below so that way you'll be notified every time there's a new episode. And we hope you have a fantastic